I think, therefore, it's without any further ado, I'm going to ask my first guest to turn their camera on. And I tuned back in this morning to hear our guest now do his presenting slot earlier. Oh, look at that. Thank you very much, Bobby. He's got his Halloween lantern. Now, we've had a theme of Halloween lanterns. Ben Sparks had one last night that had been lovingly carved by his wife. Bobby, yours looks like it may not be a genuine vegetable, but no less endearing for that. Tell us about your friend.
No, I think this is courtesy of I think it's either Lidl or Poundland. It's very cheap. The thing is, what I actually wanted to bring this morning, separate to my trick, was I had one of my students when I was on University Challenge. He made me a 3D version of a Klein bottle. So I took it on. So I'd like to think it's one of the most famous Klein bottles in Britain. And we call it Kleiny the Bottle. And I can't find it because I was going to decorate Kleiny the Bottle as a pumpkin. I'm so sad. I'm starting off with some sad news that there would have been a world's first ever Klein bottle pumpkin.
Well, and something that perhaps, unless you're saying you can't find it for reasons that you're worried about, if you just think it's there somewhere, perhaps you could put something on your social media feed later on that we could check in to see Kleiny the Bottle in its Halloween regalia.
Exactly, yeah. I hope I can find it.
I love it. So Bobby and I met actually in February of this year, before things became quite so unreal.
Feels like an eternity ago.
It does seem like forever ago. I keep thinking it can't possibly be this year because of everything that's changed since. But Bobby was the maths ambassador for a competition that I was involved in running across the UK for teams of mathematicians from primary and secondary schools to come together. And he was involved in our final that we held at the Natural History Museum. Explore, Learning and Enrich combined. And it was wonderful. So I knew about him before then, but certainly we met face to face for the first time in February, which was delightful. Now, Bobby, I have all sorts of exciting things here about you on my list. Would you rather that I did your spiel and you have to look not at all embarrassed, but you could, bask in the glory of what
I'll hide.
I can do this spiel. Fantastic.
In British fashion, I've learned the more work I do, it's good to tell people what you do because then you might get new friends. But sometimes in Britain, we're kind of yes, I did this.
Absolutely. Well, and the bit that always makes me, which obviously Mark Watson might be more experienced in than perhaps the people who are contributing to this feed today, is I always think it's hilarious that I know comedians stand behind the curtain before they come on stage and do the, will you now please welcome to the stage? And I feel it's a bit like that. So if you want to hide inside your jacket or just look quietly pleased at the things that we're going to share about you, that would be super. Wonderful stuff. This is nice. This T-shirt made an appearance earlier. And do you just want to hold it up a minute, Bobby, for those people who haven't seen it yet? This is a particularly lovely illustration of, what does it say? Say no.
Say no to mathematically impossible street signs.
Say no. So if you've never seen one of these street signs, you might like to keep a lookout. I know Matt Parker, and I didn't know there were T-shirts that existed about it, but we're going to talk more about T-shirts later because I've seen some fantastic examples on the way through, and clearly I'm going to have to do some internet shopping after this. So Bobby Seagull then is a maths teacher. He's shown us his badge already this morning. I like that was the credential. Very nice indeed. And he was the author of, or is the author of, Life-Changing Magic of Numbers. Look at that. It's almost like we've practiced. I promise we haven't. He is also the co-presenter of BBC Monkman's Seagull Genius Guides. And he writes for the Financial Times, which I don't think I knew. Tell us how that came about.
So I think with the Financial Times, after my platform on University Challenge, again, if you're tuning in internationally, it's a quiz show on BBC, one of the oldest running quiz shows in the world since 1962. It's got general knowledge, maths, science, history, geography, politics, sports, the whole shebang. And I did well on it. From it, BBC plucked me up and said, this guy looks really motivational, because I'm knowledgeable, but I'm also I like to think I'm a nice, positive guy. And they gave me a TV series on the back of that about Monkman and Seagull's Genius Guide, exploring the UK, all the sort of quirky bits of science and history. Then again, I published a book, and I have a podcast with Maths Appeal with Susan Okereke, who was actually on yesterday.
That's right, who I saw yesterday with the wonderful marigold maths. Dress. It was just with the sparkly dress also, but the rubber gloves, I think, were the bit the takeaway for me.
And with the Financial Times, actually, before I became a teacher, so you had to whisper this quietly, I used to be a trader at an investment bank. So I have a lot of, I used to, and a chartered accountant, but actually when I was in banking and finance, I had like a 3-month sabbatical where I taught new graduates joining the firm. And I thought, like, to be honest, I enjoyed my financial work and trading, but I loved the teaching. These were adults, 21, 22 years, but I still love that. That's why I changed careers to become a teacher, went to Cambridge to do my master's, then went on University Challenge. And the FT heard about that. They're like, oh, you're someone that's an educator, passionate about numbers and maths education. And they also thought that a lot of their readers wanted to find out more about personal finance and how it links to maths. And in fact, this morning, I had an interview with the chief economist of the Bank of England. It's the front page of the FT, talking about how we can improve Britain's numeracy, because next week is Britain's number conference week, and the week after is Maths Week England. So lots of maths
Absolutely.
coming out.
So there are lots of events coming up. Well, and part of that, I'm guessing, will be linked with your role as the ambassador, because you're an ambassador for the charity National Numeracy. Is that right?
Yes, and that's what Number Conference Week is about. So again, if you're new to that, again, just Google National Numeracy. They've got lots of events. It's mainly aimed actually at adults who are trying to improve their confidence. For example, Maths Week England is the week after, and that's aimed at schools predominantly. But Maths Week England is because most people leave school. Okay, we all love maths here today. I know that. Thank you, YouTubers. But a lot of people outside the world, if I tell them I'm a maths teacher, they're like, oh no, not that guy, not that guy again. So it's about trying to change their attitudes about mathematics and make them realize it's as magic as we know it is.
Great, wonderful stuff. That sounds amazing. Thank you very much. Okay, well, and we'll talk more about Maths Week England later on, if not with you, if there's time, certainly with other people. So if you're a student who's watching, then there's all sorts of events that are going on the week after next, called Maths Week England, but lots of them are online, and therefore, even if you're not in the UK, you can probably access those.
Yeah. And I'm posting stuff about Numeracy Week and Maths Week England on Twitter at Bobby_Seagull.
At Bobby_Seagull. Wonderful stuff. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so without further ado then, before I ask you to share your trick with us, Bobby, do you have a treat? So I know we need to leave time for that too.
My treat is actually related
that's fine. So just as long as you have one, that's perfectly all right. I just wanted to make sure that, I didn't not leave time for it and then be kind of like, okay, wonderful stuff. Okay, so then I can either turn my camera off.
No, I'd like you to take part.
Wonderful, in which case I shall stay and take part. Superb. In which case I'm going to hand over to Bobby Seagull for his trick of Halloween. Off you go, Bobby.
Okay, so this is not necessarily Halloween related. It might be. But so this is actually a trick that I once saw as a child, and I quite liked it. So I've written it in my book. Plug. Let me read out to you the puzzle. So follow along. So firstly, so you can take part on YouTube, and I know you're 30 seconds behind, but I'll watch for your comments as well.
We will. We'll keep an eye on them as they come in. Brilliant stuff.
Okay. So I want you, Fran, and YouTube users and people across the world to think of a number, a whole number, from 1 to 10. So think of a whole number from 1 to 10.
Okay.
So I want you now to multiply that by 9. Multiply that number by 9.
Multiply it by 9. Oh, now if you've if you saw the Marigold maths yesterday with the 6 and higher, you can also, some of you might know the trick with your fingers about doing your 9 times table. If you don't and you're just really good with your 9 times table, that's great. So I am going to multiply my number by 9 and then write down the answer, because otherwise it will fall out of my head. Okay, right.
Good idea.
Done.
So if you have a single digit, leave it. But if you've got 2 digits, add the 2 digits together for me on your answer.
Okay, so I have got 2 digits, and I'm going to add those 2 together just to create one number. I think that's called finding the digital root. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
You find the digital root of a number. I think it's when you add the digits together. So we're finding the digital root. Okay, I've now got my single digit. Fantastic.
Okay, I now want this is a number that came up earlier, but this morning I was with Julia Collins from Perth doing a session. And she said her favorite number is 5. So this is for you, right, Julia. I want you to subtract the number 5 from this.
That's really nice. Okay, subtracting the number 5 from this. Okay, so I've done that. Thank you, those of you who are playing along in the chat, and very thank you to those people who are not giving anything away, even if they think they know it already. They're just feeling quietly smug and joining in.
Feel that smugness, embrace the smugness.
Absolutely.
Then, if 1 is an A, 2 is B, and 3 is C, find the letter equivalent for your number.
Oh, okay. So if I'm taking the letters of the alphabet, A, B,
Yeah.
C, D, and so on, if I wrote out the numbers underneath them, that would give me the numbers from 1 to
Yeah. So
26.
keep
But
that secret.
take the number I've got, yep, and I'm going to
You should have a letter.
that letter. Oh, I see. Okay. Yep, I've got that letter. Okay.
Okay. So now this, you've got to be fairly quick. With a letter, think of a country that begins with that letter.
Okay.
Okay. And now the last letter of that country.
Yes.
Think of an animal that begins with that letter.
Okay.
And now the last letter of that animal,
Yes.
think of a color that begins with that letter.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. I'm hoping, wait, it's like Blue Peter. Here's one I prepared earlier. I'm hoping, boing, 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 boing. Please tell me.
Indeed. Yeah. So I had, this is, you can't see, so this was my board. I had mine isn't as beautifully illustrated as yours. You had time to do your kangaroo is much more, and the flag too. So it's red background and a white. Nice. So Denmark, kangaroo, and orange.
Yes.
Fantastic stuff. Okay, a round of applause. Thank you very much. I can hear people, cheering the world over. Bobby, do you want to reveal the maths behind the trick?
Absolutely. So this is something which I often use with students in their first day of secondary school. First assembly, not the first day. That's a bit not the first ever day. The first assembly, and it's a trick. And I put it up, and I put the flashing image of an orange kangaroo in Denmark, and then you can see it's a bit like a Royal Institution masterclass. The students are like, well, how did he do that? This is a mind reader. And then I'm like, no. And then if I'm not a mind reader, then I try and get kids to say, did anyone work out what I did? And then someone's like, one kid, there's the smug one, is going like, it was always going to be that. Or someone really smug says it's like a, what is it? They say it's a aqua-colored iguana in Djibouti. And we'll come to why that could have been that. But essentially, if we get any number, multiply it by 9, add the 2 digits. So you got 18, 27, 36, 45, making sure I'm not making any mistakes. They all add up to 9. And then when you subtract the 5, you always end up with 4, we're hoping, as though if you're following base 10. Again, I should have clarified these assumptions, base 10. You end up with 4. And now this is the bit where it's a bit of a number trick combined with a bit of psychology. On the spot, in Europe, most people will say Denmark. If you said Djibouti or Dominican Republic or Dominica, we end up with a whole different set of animals, which I need to. If I did this in the Caribbean or in Asia, I would need a different set of animals. I would need a aqua blue colored iguana in Djibouti. But
so
it's more psychology. But I like the idea of kids realizing that maths can almost like the Pied Piper of Hamelin. You can guide people down a little merry way, and that's what a lot of it, because there is a logic behind it. It's arithmetic with a pattern behind the 9 times table. But with that, you combine that to human psychology, and then you get the awe when the reveal happens.
Yeah. Well, and definitely the awe. We got some lovely comments in the chat saying somebody could only think of killer whale, which I rather like, as opposed to kangaroo, which is nice. Absolutely nothing wrong with killer whales here. And Brown Cole, who said the trick is nice, but different in Dutch. And of course, I forget that, if you're watching us from around the world and we're talking in English, so thank you very much indeed for, if this is not your first language that you're tuning in. But certainly it will work differently in different languages. I wonder, there was somebody else, Matt Pepperell had commented, he had Denmark, but then he went for koala, and then he went for azure, which is kind of nice. I have to say, it did cross my mind about koala, and then I was like, right, well, it wasn't the first one. I was thinking about other kind of, or kookaburra, I suppose. We've had, Australian colleagues on this morning. Okay, so thank you very much. That's absolutely superb. And possibly, I guess you were talking about being the awe and the reveal of being a teacher is very much the Pied Piper. We want to take our students with us in a, I'm intrigued despite myself, even if I don't understand the maths behind it yet. So I guess teachers could perhaps have azure koalas from Denmark, pre-prepared, as well as their orange kangaroos from Denmark.
That's why I've done in my lessons. I've had like the alternate ones. For the students that get the Dominican Republic or Djibouti, just in case.
Absolutely. Or to get them to say why theirs works too is nice as a, mine is just as valid and here's why kind
Absolutely.
of so fantastic stuff. Okay, now you said you had a treat for us as well. It being Halloween, we're doing tricks and treats, hopefully, if we have time. Tell us about your treat, Bobby.
Yeah, so it's an unusual treat. It's more something like a fascination. So so let me explain this shirt. And this morning I was actually wearing this shirt, but I changed to look like the Minions. You know the Minions, the yellow and blue.
Yes.
So I'm a Minion. Anyway, that's not my treat. But so Matt Parker, he actually, he spotted that the football street signs in the UK were all hexagons, six-sided shapes, and obviously on a 2D flat surface that tessellates. But we all know football's not played in the two-dimensional world; it's played in the real world. And to make a football tessellate, you need pentagons and hexagons. And in which case, yeah, so he did a campaign. He tried to get the street signs changed. He got a petition, 20,000 signatures, and the government, how dare they? They've done some bad things, governments. I'm not talking about politics, but this was the one that upset me the most. They rejected the petition. So
wow.
So this
Despite
is
all of those people who wanted to say this is inaccurate mathematics and,
yes.
Please could we do something about this?
Exactly. So I started actually, again, using my FT column, which I'm going to paste now in the YouTube link.
Fantastic stuff. Thank you.
I started a campaign about something else than mathematical inaccuracy. So whether it's inaccuracy or not, but in Cambridge, I often cycle around and I use a bicycle lock. What would you typically call a bicycle lock with numbers?
A combination lock?
Combination lock, yeah. So if you asked me what my combination was, and I said it's 4189 or 1489, but it didn't, let's say 4189, but actually it was 9184. But I've given you the correct combination. Why have I tricked you slightly? So you've asked me, can you unlock my bike?
Okay, so you've told me it's 4189.
And you asked me what's the combination, but actually my combination is 9184. What have I done? What have I done?
So I think you've given me the correct digits.
Yes.
But because the combination is how they're put together, not necessarily the order that they're currently in.
Yes. So bicycle locks, if you go into Argos or Halfords or any store in the world, you can buy a combination lock. But mathematically, when the order matters, it's called a permutation lock. And I legitimately, I used it FT Fran, I used, maybe it's a bit cheeky, but I used one of my Financial Times columns last year. And the headline was, to sum it up, it pays to be pernickety. A column where I talked about Matt Parker's shirt, and then I talked about my campaign that I'm starting on trying to get bicycle shops to at least put an asterisk saying this should be a permutation lock. It's not a
This should be a permutation lock. I love that. I had a conversation with some students of mine recently, and very simply, at some supermarkets, there is an aisle that you can take just a basket of things that says 10 items or less. And at another supermarket chain, I'm not telling you which is which, it says 10 items or fewer. Now, one of those is correct and one of them is not. But I really like this, pernickety, pedantry. It's all part of using the correct language, I guess. And we're not doing it to be exclusionary. We're just doing it to say, actually, the right way of doing it is this, even though commonly it is sometimes called other things. I love that. Permutation lock. I'm going to change it from now on.
Every shop you go and take a black marker pen, cross it out, or put a little asterisk for them.
I love it. So you heard it here first. This is where the campaign. And Bobby, before we say goodbye to you, because we're coming towards the end of our time, is there anything else you want to tell us about how we can, you've mentioned the book and you've mentioned your Twitter handle. How else can we follow you or find out what else you're involved with next?
So generally speaking, my social media at Bobby_Seagull on Twitter, the same on Instagram. And again, YouTube, I've got Bobby Seagull TV. The social media platforms, I generally share all my things there. But one thing I'd love people's feedback on is I have a podcast with Susan Okereke called Maths Appeal. And again, you can find it on all your Spotify, iTunes, everywhere else. And we interview fabulous guests like Dr. Amory Mafadon, Alex Bellos, Simon Singh, talk to them about their mathematical journeys, do a little puzzle, share a fun maths fact. And again, Susan and I, we like to call it, what's the word we use it? We call it not banter, we call it maths vibing. Because Susan and I, we've got we don't often have a script. We've got some ideas and then we just vibe off each other. So we call it maths vibing. So if you want to see or listen to some maths vibing, Maths Appeal, we'd love you to have a listen and tell us what you think.
Wonderful stuff. Well, and I've learned a new word. Thank you very much indeed. Certainly not the first of this, kind of maths 24-hour, but maths vibing sounds like a thing I could definitely get on board with. Okay, well, you can't hear all of the applause online, but I am sure people are delighted to see you. Thank you for presenting earlier, giving of your time and coming back as a guest. And we're going to say, oh, look, and I'm going to look out for Kleiny Bottle in his Halloween costume later on. So don't disappoint us on that front, please. Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed, Bobby Seagull. We'll look forward to seeing you again soon. All right.
Okay, see you.
Care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.